Final main topic today. And our final main topic today comes to us from Greg Lipp, who writes, I read an interesting article today on Variety calling into question whether Avengers Endgame can actually break the opening weekend box office record. The basic idea of the article is that with a 3-hour runtime, there simply may not be enough screenings of the film opening weekend to break the record. So, my question is this true? With all the pre-sales records, it seems silly that it couldn't break the opening weekend record. What do you think? All right. Thanks a lot for the question, man. Appreciate it. And yeah, that's been a pretty big topic of conversation lately. How big will the opening weekend be for Avengers Endgame? Now, the article that he's talking about specifically is from Variety. That is asking the question, like some people are talking about 300 million. This article is asking, can it even break the record of 250 million? Here's the funny thing. I told you guys this before, and I totally believe it now. If Avengers Endgame, say, makes $245 million opening weekend, second biggest opening weekend in the history of cinema, there are going to be brain dead idiots out there going, oh, it failed. Why did it fail? Why did it underperform? Second biggest opening weekend in the history of film. And they're going to be idiots out there going, why did it underperform? $245 million. And they're going to go, oh, well, that's it. Comic book movie fatigue. Do you remember when Avengers Age of Ultron came out? It opening weekend made less than the first Avengers movie did opening weekend, but it was still one of the biggest opening weekends in history. But of course, all the boo birds came out and they're like, oh, that means that comic book movie fatigues. People don't care about comic book movies anymore. And that's what happened. Obviously, they were dead wrong. So I'm already giggling and getting mad in advance that if, for whatever reason, Endgame doesn't break the opening weekend box office record, but still has a momentously huge opening, there are going to be people going, oh, comic book movie fatigue. It failed. Why did it fail? Why did it underperform? It's just, that type of idiocy just makes me frustrated. But with all the advanced ticket sales records and all that kind of stuff, why would something like a Variety suggest that maybe there's a possibility this movie can't break the opening weekend record, let alone 300 million? Well, there are some good reasons for it to ask that question. Personally, just to be clear, yeah, I believe Endgame is going to break the opening weekend record. I believe Avengers Endgame will beat the opening weekend record. Let's be clear about that. But it's not insane for somebody to call it into question, because there's a few things that we should keep in mind when thinking about Endgame breaking the record. Here's some of the challenges it needs to face, and it's just about math, all right? It's just about math. Here it is. Now, Variety did a breakdown of this, and they showed how at a 3-hour runtime, that means on average, each screen that Avengers Endgame is going to play on will have one less screening per day that it can have. That's significant. Now, because Infinity War, when it opened on 40, it was one of the widest released movies of all time. It opened on nearly 4,500 screens. Now follow that up. That means if it opens in the same amount of theaters, which is one of the biggest wide releases of all times, that means if there's one less screening per screen because of the 3-hour runtime, that means Endgame, if we go right here, Endgame will have at least 4,500 less screenings on opening weekend than Infinity War did. Think about that. At 3 hours, that's an average of one less screening per screen. At 4,500 screens, that means Endgame, theoretically speaking, will have 4,500 less potential screenings than Infinity War did. Now continue following that logic. We go down here. Now the average seating capacity for a movie theater in America is 250 seats. Some are much bigger, some are smaller, but the average is 250 seats per theater. Now, if you have 4,500 fewer screenings at 250 seats on average per theater, that means there's going to be 1,125,000 fewer tickets available for people to watch Endgame on its opening weekend than were available for people to watch Infinity War on their opening weekend. The average ticket cost in America is around $10. So now you're looking at $11 million of box office less that's available to Endgame to make than was available to Infinity War. Now, with all this being said, and this is good math that Variety laid out. It's good math. You do also have to take into consideration some extenuating circumstances. Even though Infinity War played on just about every screen in every theater and they ran 24 hours, like blah, 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 you do have the possibility that maybe Endgame gets on even more screens than Infinity War did. That would help compensate those 1,125,000 fewer available tickets if you added more screens. The problem with more screens is theaters will be hesitant to add it to more screens because with Disney films, when you put a movie on a screen, you got to make a commitment to keep it on that screen for at least a full week or a week or two. And like some of these movie theaters were like, I'd love to have it for one day, but I can't take up this screen for an entire week or two. I've already got it on 10 of my other screens. You know what I'm saying? So you can add more screens. That can help mitigate that. There's a slight inflation between last year to now. Not much, barrel. It's a few pennies, but still, that'll mitigate it as well. Now, I believe that even in light of all this, I still believe Endgame is going to break the opening weekend box office record. I still believe that. But it's because of numbers like this. 4,500 less screenings. 1 million fewer seats available for people to go see. Blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. It's for reasons like this that make me have, I'd say, some doubts that it can get to this 300 million number that a lot of people are saying. There are some projection numbers that say the movie's going to make between 220 and 250 million. Some projections are saying between 250 and 280. I see it coming in there, 250, 280. I just don't see it getting to 300 million. Only because of the math. I just don't see enough seats available, but maybe it does. But I do absolutely see it breaking that opening weekend record. But again, I'm just here to say and lay out this information because don't just assume somebody's crazy if they have doubts that it'll break the record, because there is some solid math behind having that train of thought. I don't agree with the train of thought, but it's not an insane train of thought when you actually break down and look at the raw numbers. So I think that's just something for all of us to keep in mind as we're looking at this stuff, because at 3 hours, that does represent, it's not about whether or not people want to go see a 3-hour movie. It's about the logistics of at 3 hours, how many screenings can you actually fit in? And that becomes the question. So I'm pegging this thing to come in around 270 is my guess. I think it's going to break the record, probably break it pretty comfortably, but I still don't think it's going to get to 300 million. But hey, who knows? We've seen strays. I think 300 is a possibility. I don't think it's likely, but I do think it's a possibility when we're looking at the type of numbers that we are right now. And I'm thinking this is going to be the new number 2 movie all time worldwide. I think it's going to pass. Avengers Infinity War. I think it's going to pass Star Wars The Force Awakens, and I think it's going to pass Titanic. I don't think it's going to get anywhere close to Avatar, but I think we're looking in Avengers Endgame, the new total worldwide number 2 film of all time. So how that'll all play out, we'll find out soon enough. We're getting close to the actual release date.